Hey everybody, Cursius here, and with more Caravan War. Now, today we're going to discuss defending your caravan, but we're not going to use epics or legendaries because not everybody's going to have those cards. But I will discuss, what epics you should substitute for what rares and stuff like that. So, when you have them. So let's go ahead and take a look here. Now, if you have... There's several types of carts. There's the cart, the chariot, which moves much faster than the regular cart, which the chariots will always overtake your troops. So you kind of want, if you use chariots, I'll discuss chariot strategy in a minute, but we'll not discuss those for now. There's the helicopter, the blimp, and the train, which the train and the blimp are both, or the steam engine is what it's called. The steam engine and the blimp are both legendary, which are both very highly suggested to use if you have them. Now, the helicopter is epic. It has about as many hit points as a cart, almost a little bit more, but it flies, which means that the only enemy anti-air troops and buildings can touch it. And on top of it, when it's damaged, it increases its speed to ×2 for like 2 seconds. So it can get itself out of sticky situations. But anyways, like I said, though, we're going to pretend like all you have is the cart. So in your front cart here, you're probably going to want to have one cart in your front caravan. I mean, you're going to have one cart, most likely, usually. This is because you want your front 1 or 0 carts. I can suggest either, because you're going to want a lot of troops front-loaded into your front vanguard. I'm going to call these vanguards now, by the way. That's actually a better word. Anyways, in your front vanguard, you're going to want 1 or 0 carts. We're going to go with 1 cart here, and then we're going to discuss the rest. So, for defending, I am going to use only rares, but I will discuss what epics here we could replace with what rares. So, first we're going to have champions. Around 6. Come on. In the front row here. Because they are just pretty decent. And then we're also going to use shield masters. Like 1 shield master right there. And then about 2 jet troopers in the front. Now the jet troopers are there because when they die, they stun all enemy units in range for 1 second. So, it's, their jet troopers are very good. And plus, actually, there is one major flaw in most caravans, which I will discuss because it's going to be very, very important. But anyways, but first we're going to keep going here. Then we're going to take about 2 artificers right there. In fact, actually, behind the 2 jet troopers, you could probably put a wisp. Just 1 wisp. Don't need any more. If you go too crazy on the air units in any caravan, and one or more of your caravans, the enemy could just end up spamming rocket towers, which would basically kill all your air units and destroy your strategy. So, next, like I said, we're going to go with Artificers. Specifically, we're going to take about 6 of them for this for the front caravan. 6 Artificers will basically make sure that all your guys get healed by a lot when they go off. So, pretty good. And having all the high health minions, along with some air units in the front, will make sure that the enemy spamming bombard towers isn't going to be very effective. Now next, we're going to take some scouts, and we're going to put them like right here. Next, we're going to take a couple blade masters, because blade masters are actually pretty good. You just have to make sure that they're not in too much of an exposed area. They deal very good damage, and their attacks splash, meaning that if the enemy uses a lot of small units or summoners, then blade masters can take out the summoned units or the smaller units very fast. So, now we have 2 open slots right there. which means we should probably use a couple more shield masters. And that'll do that. Because if you go the blade masters in front of the shield masters, then you're just taking a chance that your blade masters might get splashed off. So let's see here. Then we have the rear rank. Now, in the rear rank, if you have these units, then you use them. If you have marshals, you use them. And if you have knights, you use them as well. But like I said, we're pretending we don't have these units. So we're just going to go ahead and take care of that by replacing them. So we're probably just going to put in a couple more champions. And probably 2 more blade masters. Now, the reason for this setup here is, like I said, now the biggest thing that the biggest weakness all caravans have is air units. Anti-air is a big problem because the only units that can target air are other air units. You might think the scouts are the one that can target air units, but scouts actually cannot target air units. I went over this pretty quickly to make sure, and scouts only target ground units. The only thing that can target other air units are certain legendary units, wisps, and jet troopers, and the marshal. Everything else, except and the Griffin Rider, but everything else cannot target air units, which is a bit of a problem. So that's why I suggest as an add-on. Now, if you have the laser cannon or the flamer, I suggest using either. But like I said, we're pretending like you don't have these because both of these are epic and they have very high damage, very high attack speed, and the flamer deals damage to enemies in a cone. So I suggest that you use ballistas or the scattergun. The ballista fires two shots per second, which is pretty good. So therefore, the ballista's DPS is 186 per second, which isn't too bad. Or is actually it's like 148 per second or something like that. You gotta take half of one of these and then add it in, I think, for 2 seconds. Or I could be right, it's double. I don't know. But anyways, or the scattergun. The scattergun fires once per second. I'm going to say once per second. It's 0.8. But it fires once per second and does pretty good damage in a cone in the firing area. So you could use a scattergun or the ballista. I personally like the ballista. I'm going to go with it. And this should basically be what a pretty decent normal caravan should look like. Like, you're going to want tanky guys in front of the vanguard, a small amount of air units, like jet troopers and wisps, buffering the ground tanky units, and making sure that any enemy anti-air units that engage them, like if the enemy uses splash units that deal damage to air units as well, like alchemists or djinns, they're going to kill the jet troopers, which is going to stun their units and give your other second vanguard more time. Now, when you have the next vanguard, you're going to want 2 or 3 caravans or carts in this vanguard. You're going to want the carts all the way back, and I'll discuss using chariots and how you should work those in if you do. Now, for this vanguard, if you have any golems, I would suggest using them, because the golems will walk up on the enemy here and start taking care of business. But again, like I said, I'm pretending like we don't have those, so you're just going to want to, once again, stick to the tried and true method of using these guys. The champions. And of course, like I said, a couple air units. And then you're going to want to go with less artificers, because obviously this caravan is backing up the next one, so you're not going to want to hold things down too much. So you're going to go with more offense in the second caravan. And like I said, don't get too crazy with the air units, because if you get too crazy with the air units, then the enemy's going to spam rocket towers and you're going to have a bad time. So you want those, and then probably just a few more of these little guys. And there you go. That should be like your second caravan. Now, the add-ons you should probably use is like one ballista and probably like 2 scatter guns, which is what I like. Now, for the third caravan, you're going to want to go, once again, with 3 carts, but we're going to go with the Chariots. Now, Chariots have low HP, but they move at 1.8 speed compared to everybody else's 1.2 speed. So what this means, basically, by the way, if you have a Griffin Rider, you should put that in front of these guys, because he moves at the same pace. So the Chariots and the Griffin Rider will move way farther ahead. But once again, Griffin Rider is epic, so we're pretending like we don't have it. So next, once again, we're going to go with the caravan here. But we're going to go with not so many big units this time. I'm going to put more offense there. The final caravan unit should be one that kind of swarms a little bit. So we're going to go with guards. And, scouts. And of course, we're going to need healers. Always about 2 artificers per caravan outside the first vanguard. Like every other vanguard should have at least 2 artificers in it. The first vanguard should always have around 4 to 6. Which I like 6. 6 is a good number. And then we'll just put one of these guys there. Then we're going to go ahead and... Oh, no. We want to swarm. Because if your opponent has fallen behind on the final caravan, you're going to want a good amount of troops to swarm in on them. And so a good amount of guards and tanky guys along with some DPS guys will work just fine. Now, for this final caravan, though, if the enemy is kind of ahead, and if they are, then you're going to want to put down a couple of mortars, because when the Chariots move in, they're going to move in fast. So you're going to want a mortar, or, and if you, like I said, if you have it, a laser, because then when they come in, the mortars are going to fire off, dealing a lot of damage. And then the laser is going to be firing very fast, faster than the caravan moves, obviously, so it's going to do a whole lot of damage. But like I said, we're pretending like we don't have lasers. So either 2 or 3 mortars, or 2 mortars and a crossbow. Or ballista, whatever. I call them crossbows. But yeah. Basically, if you have 3 caravans, this is what your strategy should look like. But if you are early on in the game, like I said, a strategy like this should probably work, because your opponent's not going to have anti-air rocket towers, and so you're going to be looking okay. But like I said, certain legendary units and certain other kinds of towers will kind of hurt things. But otherwise, this is fairly solid. And like I said about the chariots, you should use the chariots as kind of a sudden, artillery backup plan. Like if you're kind of ahead on their initial assault, when the third wave arrives, those chariots are going to come in and kind of put a lot of pressure on the enemy. And they could steal aggro from the enemy towers, and just long enough to let your other towers or other units get into range for when these leave the aggro range of your towers. So those are my thoughts. But like I said, I was only demonstrating, like, if you were really unlucky, don't have epics, don't have legendaries, and I think more people would appreciate, a basic strategy over just saying, hey, you should be using these epic units that you have a very low chance to get. But let's go ahead and discuss now really quick what epics and legendaries you should be using. So if you have the epics and legendaries, now this is basically pretty solid the way I have it right there, but you're going to want like a marshal and a knight in the back. The knights, the paladins, should always be put as far back as possible in your caravan vanguard, so that when they aggro, they're going to run a pretty good distance before they hit an enemy, so that they deal a lot of damage. Because their passive ability lets them deal up to 250% extra damage, depending on how far they travel before they hit their first enemy. So, in the second caravan, oh, that's right, and like I said, this cart should be, if you have the epic, it should be a wagon, which has more more damage to it, more health to it, and takes less damage. And it should have a laser on it. Laser beam, going to be more effective, obviously, because the laser deals a lot of damage really fast and deals increasingly more damage the same as it hits the same target. Then the next vanguard, really, we could take just 2 of these. Like I said, golems, very effective at what they do. Because when they die, like if you're falling behind over here and these guys come in, what's going to happen is if the golem dies, it turns into a big rock that forcefully taunts your enemy troops to attack it. And you would think that this would be a good thing to put in the front caravan, but I kind of disagree a little bit, because you want a lot of troops in your front vanguard. And then behind here, obviously, is we're just going to put some of these guys, champions. And then just keep it all like that. And then we're going to replace a few things here, because we need to. And then we'll just replace them right here like that. Put more scouts down. Like I said, scouts are good for backup damage, because they're slightly ranged, but they don't attack air units. So spamming scouts isn't that great of an idea, unless it's like your very final caravan and you're way ahead of the enemy. So, and the final caravan, if you have the laser and the flamer, always put the laser on the middle caravan, because that way if your opponent has rogues will attack the nearest caravan first, versus the nearest cart first, so that'll be the first chariot here instead of the chariot with the laser on it, and then it'll just keep going. And then just leave a mortar on this one, I guess. Because as these chariots come through, then they're going to deal a lot of damage really fast, and then they're going to leave. So that's how you do that. And like I said, if you have the Griffin Rider, put the Griffin Rider in front of the 3 chariots. So this way, if the Griffin Rider has to stop and fight something, it will. Otherwise, it will kind of remain right in front of the chariots and take aggro from ballista towers and you know, Tesla towers and stuff like that. So pretty decent. But like I said, you know, these are just basic concepts for you to get, so that if in fact, actually, you know, we could also replace just 2 of these, or four guards with a couple more of the jet troopers. Because like I said, jet troopers are actually really good, but you just have to not go crazy with them, because then your opponent could just spam rocket towers. Anyways, so let me know what you guys think. Those are my thoughts. Basically, these are just basic concepts to put into action, and you can see how they work, understand how they work, and maybe improve upon them. Like I said, you know, these are a lot of ideas that I've seen, a lot of ideas I've seen work, a lot of ideas I've seen fail. I kind of just mash them together, and we get some concepts on what works and what doesn't. So, anyways, so thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I'll see you guys in the next video. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, and catch me on twitch.tv/Curseus between, you know, 5 to 7 days a week, depending. It could be more, could be less. But anyways, thank you so much. See you guys in the next video.